Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Punch Up Pod with Lila and Pat. Happy Wednesday. Thank you all for joining us. How are you, Pat?
I'm good. We've never made a hump day joke, have we? We're really growing up, aren't we?
We've done the prom jokes. We've done all the crazy. No, we haven't done the hump day jokes. We we missed everybody last week. We were supposed to have a show and had to cancel last minute. So apologies to those of you who showed up. We saw some of the comments, and the big lie was that we were not having a show as advertised last week. But we are back and very excited to talk about all of the lies that are being perpetuated by our Democratic Party as we head towards the midterms. But before we get to that, Pat, why don't you tell me about your weekend? How was your weekend?
Good. Yeah, I went to Santa Cruz. I won't get into why, but it was a fun time up there, and got my booster shot. So I was sick for 2 days.
Why would you get a booster shot when COVID's over?
With pandemic being over, I don't know.
The pandemic's all over. What are you doing? You're crazy.
Because I support big pharma, obviously.
There you go. That's the answer. How are you feeling with it?
I'm good. I get sick for like 2 days every single time, which I'm actually happy about because it means you're having a natural response. It's acting like it should.
Right.
So I don't really mind it in the big picture.
Yeah. That's how I felt when I had morning sickness with my kids. It was, what was it? I don't know. It was like a flurry of new puppy stuff. And no one should think that just because we didn't have a show last week that I wasn't drinking through all of my major
Did you have a wheel with shots?
Yeah, it was just my own wheel, my own shots, my own bottle as I, watched one assault on us after another transpire. But I'm incredibly happy to be here with everybody so we can, as we go through the goings on of the week, we can all join each other in misery and some cocktails and let's get to it, right? We should get to it. We are so excited that we have Green Party candidate Matthew Ho of North Carolina for Senate. I've inverted that 6 different ways, and English is my first language. I have no
get on the ballot.
Yes. And we're so thrilled to have him here with us. So without further ado, let's bring Matthew on. I'm going to add him. Am I doing it, Pat? I did it. Look at that. It's just us doing everything. So sometimes we push buttons in separate towns. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. You're out in California. I'm here in North Carolina. But the technology makes it work. It's exciting.
It's kind of cool. It's one of the, I know there's a lot to say about the technology that's negative, but these kinds of things that bring people together over the interwebs, it's pretty cool. That makes it feel like a smaller world.
Well, and I say this a lot when people ask me, like, what gives me hope for political change? It's this type of stuff. A few years ago, we couldn't have done this. When I first started doing media 13 years ago, there was absolutely none of this. You went to a studio or you got on a landline, and that was it. I mean, even 5 years ago, you didn't do that often. Like, you still went to the studio. You could use your cell phone for a call, maybe, but like not this. I mean, so this is what gives me hope for political change, because this type of communication, sharing of information, coordination, that can be done through this technology is something that I don't really think we understand yet. And it's something that when we talk about how we're going to take on the establishment, that edifice, that Leviathan, the Goliath, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Well, this is the asymmetric manner that we do so, or one of the manners. So it's exciting stuff. It's also just really cool, though, because this is like, I grew up watching the Jetsons. So this is like,
It is really cool. And, I think it does the accessibility and the transparency. It makes things, I keep remembering those times in the late 80s and 90s when Trump would call into radio shows pretending he was his own PR person. He was like John somebody. Well, that couldn't happen. That just absolutely could not happen anymore. So there's something nice about being able to like really interact with people.
Yeah, and the way it works, right? And the way not just the 3 of us, but you can have. We're going to do a webinar tomorrow night with Margaret Kimberly. You know what I mean?
Oh, great. She's fantastic.
Right. Yeah. And you have all these people join, and just like you can have here, right? George Jetson 24 says, Daniel New York 1, right? I mean, so it's like, it's very cool, but it's also what it allows us to do. I don't think we fully grasped yet.
Yeah. Yeah. It really brings a sense of community throughout the whole country. Sorry, Pat, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I think the problem still is that we're very fragmented as far as the news media goes, independent of the CNN, MSNBCs of the world. But the saving grace is that young people are tuning in to independent media, and it really is debunking a lot of the narratives, because, you know, a lot of this stuff is just not going to get out on CNN, MSNBC ever. So, you know, I think we need more TYTs, but more. Whoa,
watch it.
Take that with a grain of salt, but more of that idea, because younger people don't tune into those network shows as much anymore, and so the revolution CNN isn't going to say, hey, go do X, Y, Z. But if we have a show with the breadth of TYT, and we have like maybe 5 or 6 TYTs out there saying it's time for us to stand up and do X, Y, Z, we have a shot.
Yep.
Right. And there's that inability to be controlled, and also too to find media that reports, you know, honestly and thoroughly and with some integrity. You know, I got rid of my cable television 8 years ago, and every now and then I'll do a show like yours, and like someone will show a clip from MSNBC or Fox or CNN, and I'm like, getting rid of cable was the best decision I've made in 8 years. Like, not watching that, because it really was. It's toxic, but it's also a friend of mine who monitors this stuff. She was talking about how last week the coordinated campaign of reporting about how Biden came in and stopped the railroad strike, and he has saved the nation from more inflation while taking care of the rail workers, that whole nonsense narrative. And then she was talking about not so much the coordinated pushing that out, but when that all fell apart, the coordinated pulling it back, how everything went dark on it so quickly, and how it wasn't going to be talked about. I mean, like, so that it really is insidious what we're up against in terms of the corporate media. And you know, I think a number of years ago, we would say that, oh, that's kind of conspiracy talk. But I think there's a lot of really good evidence of it, as well as we can see the corollary to it, which is stuff like you guys do, you know, so.
Well, thank you. And, you know, I mean, it is a conspiracy. It's a true conspiracy. Like, they are all working together. They are truly conspiring to create a narrative and to continue this duopoly, which brings us to your candidacy. It has not been uneventful. How have you been welcomed onto the onto the stage by Democrats down there in North Carolina?
By the official Democratic Party, not well, but that's okay. They were really upset with us, to put it mildly. With the Green Party here in North Carolina, we had a petition to get on the ballot. We had to go out, collect signatures. We did it. We submitted 165% of what we needed. We met all the deadlines, fulfilled all the requirements. And within days of us turning in those signatures, the Democratic Central Campaign Committee had its law firm, the Elias Law Group, down here working against us. And that was really about a 2.5 month long process of fighting with the Democratic Party, like the Democratic Party, not the North Carolina Democratic Party, but Chuck Schumer's outfit, the DSCC. And Mark Elias is Hillary Clinton's lawyer, John Kerry's lawyer, Kamala Harris's lawyer. I mean, like, he is arguably the most prominent Democratic attorney in the country. And that's what we were up against. And we had to go to federal court. We had to go to federal appeals court. We won in both those places, as well as in state court. Won there too. We also got the State Board of Elections after their 2.5 month long investigation, which was unprecedented. They made the counties recount everything we had submitted, which had never been done before in North Carolina history. Wow. Turned up nothing. They had to reverse themselves and certify us after they had not certified us. And all those roads lead to the governor's office, to Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper, of course, is the head of the Democratic Governors Association. People around the country are familiar with him because he was the one who really spearheaded that effort to fund the MAGA Trump candidates throughout the country, like Mastriano in Pennsylvania, Cox and Delaware, or Maryland, I guess. So Cooper is a dirty guy. and what they did as well. I mean, they went so far down here that they were calling, texting, and showing up at people's homes to try and get them to remove their signatures from our petition sheets. Right. And that's not the worst part about it. It's the fact that they were impersonating the Green Party. They were impersonating the State Board of Elections, and they were impersonating the Secretary of State's office when they were doing it. So they were telling people, I'm from the Green Party. We're actually, what they would say is, I'm from the Green Party. We're already on the ballot. So if you remove your signature, it's not that big a deal. We're just concerned that it would help Republicans. Like this thing that made no sense.
Yeah.
But we have them on tape doing that, as well as we have
How did you catch them on tape? Did some people whom they approached actually tape them? Is that what happened?
Yeah, what happened was we started hearing, because what happened is people who signed our petitions started calling us and saying, hey, you guys are calling me to take my name off your petition. Like, what are you doing? And we said, right, what? That's not us.
Thank goodness people actually called you for, right?
And we had a journalist who told us, who had found out the Elias Law Group and the DSCC were down here. See, there was collusion that occurred between the governor's office, the Elias Law Group, and the State Board of Elections that we're still, that needs to get reported on more. But the whole thing was dirty. So what happened was we knew this. And so some of our folks who hadn't been contacted yet by the DSCC to get their names taken off the petition, they were prepared. So they called actually the co-chair of our state party, and Tony was ready, and he knows how to do it and everything. They texted me, so I just screenshot the text and put them on Twitter, and that went bananas.
I saw one of the videos. It was great.
Yeah, and then the video, and then what they were doing is, they were showing up. We have one affidavit where the lady speaks about how the person came to her house on a Sunday and said she was with the Secretary of State's office, and her response is, "You're at the Secretary of State's office and you're working on a Sunday?" I mean, just like, right. So they were committing this fraud, and then the whole thing centered around us being castigated for alleged fraud. So what happens with the State Board of Elections in a partisan manner, and on the State Board of Elections, the actual board, it's 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans, because the governor is Democrat, so the Democrats control the State Board of Elections. And what they say is that when we turn our signatures in, they say, well, we see some irregularities here. We're concerned there might be more. So we have to investigate further. But because there's not enough time to investigate, we're not going to certify you. So they denied our certification, which is why we had to go to federal court to get onto the ballot.
Right.
But, but the whole argument was one based upon of we think there's something wrong. We have questions. We can't show you any evidence. We're not going to provide any due process. And we're going to provide absolutely no legal justification. But we're going to, and so what we ran into was something that was very dangerous. This idea that it was just simply going to be an arbitrary decision of whichever political party was in power as to who was going to be on the ballot, which is something we see more or less. But the just the overt disregard for, again, evidence, due process, legal justification. And so fortunately we had a ton of media and we had a great attorney, and we won in court, and that forced their hand, and we are on the ballot now. But even too with the media, you're up against their narrative. Yeah. So even now, a month and a half later that we got put on the ballot after all this is over, and again, no evidence of fraud. I mean, the judge, said that the Democratic Party did not have clean hands and they're acting in bad faith, and all kinds of other pretty serious things to be coming from a judge.
Right.
But even a month and a half later, when we get mentioned in the media now, it's still, the allegations of fraud. The Green Party got on the ballot after allegations of fraud. So even though there was never any fraud, I mean, again, never any fraud, the allegations of fraud, it's the narrative that we're fighting. It's all part of something that, you have to deal with as an independent.
It's so sinister. It's really gross.
It must really eat you up seeing the Democratic Party push that democracy is always at stake on the ballot and having, rightfully pushing back against the Republican Party, trying to usurp elections more or less by, not validating certain elections and whatnot. And that's their whole narrative, is that the Republican Party is doing this. And then here you are front and center as a candidate, and they're doing it to you as from the Democratic side.
I mean, Pat, to a degree, I think the brazenness of it, like how, just how without any regard to any form of decency or humility, they were just going to do this. And we ran into this kind of this arrogance of power all the time of, this is what we're going to do, and what are you going to do about it? And we did something, and we won, but
thank goodness,
that's not always the case for a lot of third parties or independent. We had some things going for us. We were able to raise the money, things like that to fight back. But the other side of it, though, is that this is why I'm not in the Democratic Party. I've never been a Democrat. I never registered with a party until 2 years ago with the Green Party. So, but even before that, I was never going to be in the Democratic Party. And my experience working in DC and Congress and at a think tank and all around, I wasn't shocked by what happened. Again, the brazenness of it was something different, but that they were going to do this, we were prepared for it. It's just the full force and weight that they brought down on us so quickly. Again, sending the Elias Law Group down here right away, that took us by surprise.
It's amazing how threatened they are, and I hear a lot of sort of normie Dems say, well, I'm glad to see Democrat, when you say, how can Democrats say that they stand for democracy and democracy is on the ballot when they are fighting to get Green Party candidates off the ballot in 5 or 6 different states?
Yeah.
And a typical response I will get from like the MSNBC crowd or the Pod Save crowd is, well, I'm glad Democrats are fighting. It's time that they fight like Republicans, which is so dishonest, because the truth is, if Democrats actually wanted to fight, they would fight against their donors and fight for their base, right? We know that all of the policies that are on your platform are majority popular across the spectrum. Democrats, Republicans, independents, non-voters. So like, if you really want to fight, there is a huge area space to fight for the policies that will get people elected. But instead they choose this duplicitous, path, which just makes them as disgustingly criminal as Republicans.
Right. I mean, their concern is to keep their power, and their concern is to protect the profits of those who keep them in power. So they're big money donors. And so it wasn't as if they're concerned about me being on the ballot or the Green Party being on the ballot. The concern was that Medicare for all was going to be on the ballot. Rent control was going to be on the ballot. Public banking was going to be on the ballot. Annualized living wages were going to be on the ballot. Ending the war on drugs, a Green New Deal, and climate change were going to be spoken about. And that's one of the reasons why we're running, why we're doing this, because we know if we're not involved, those issues are not going to be present at all in this campaign. And you can go and look at the coverage of the campaign here between Ted Budd and Sherry Beasley, and there's no conversation about any of those things. We had our housing situation here in North Carolina is catastrophic. Rent.com year over year in August, our rent across the state went up 58%, 58%. And there's no conversation about it among Sherry Beasley or Ted Budd. And then the media is not interested in talking about it. Let alone all the other issues of the day, the 1,200 infants that die every year in North Carolina, the 12 overdose deaths a day in North Carolina, all these life and death issues that get no discussion in the U.S. Senate campaign. And so that's one of the prime reasons we're here. We're doing this is to try and at least provide some representation in this campaign to those who are not being represented otherwise.
So what chance do you have of actually getting a debate? This is always the question with Green candidates, because
we're fighting it. We were. But Sherry Beasley and Ted Budd agreed to a debate last week. We were never contacted about the debate. We were never even offered an explanation for what any type of requirements would be. Nothing. I mean, no contact. We were provided the opportunity to take part in a pre-debate, which is exactly right. It's like, okay, and myself and Shannon Bray, who's a libertarian candidate. So we're talking about what we can do, how we might be able to get into the debate, what we can do otherwise. But there simply is there's no stomach to have these types of discussions. Shannon and I did a series of debates last week down in Charlotte, and the response we get is not because Shannon and I are like these wise, articulate guys that just
you're pretty good. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Keep drinking. And, But like, you know, the idea though of like, wow, you guys actually had a conversation where you got into your why you
real
believe
policies
your
and
policies and your economic philosophy and why do you support, you know, I mean, libertarian and a socialist is going to always be some about which is, you know, what was the question I got from but the whole idea of personal property and where does it begin, where does it end? You know, I mean, you can have a conversation about that. You know, I mean, so things that you would never have
like substantive,
substance. And again,
but the risk, well, the risk to them, if you show up at the debate and just point out that they're not talking about the most important issues that affect your community, that puts them both on notice and they could lose the election. I mean, that's bottom line why you're not welcomed.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable, it's inconvenient. I mean, the fact that you'd have a debate where you've got two combat veterans, myself and Shannon, in the debate, and we're both anti-war candidates, and these two those two are simply going to be tools of the military-industrial complex. You know, you know, I mean, that type of, you know, providing that stark reflection of the reality of our government is just something that's very inconvenient and very uncomfortable, and it's not what they want.
Right.
So, you also too, you see this with the media where it complicates the storyline. It complicates their work, their jobs to have to include these two other candidates who don't fit on your horizontal axis of left and right.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, particularly the libertarians. I mean, you look at their platform, and yes, sure, their economics and their Austrian school of blah 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 blah. You know, but you know, and their guns. You know, okay, that's pretty much right wing stuff.
Yeah.
But then you talk to these guys about trans rights. Right. You talk to them about ending the war on drugs, you know, and you're like, you're as left wing as I am. You know what I mean? So that messes it up when you have this established way of doing politics.
Yeah, because right now Democrats have a good gig going because they've pushed the right wing further right. And then they just have to be like a smidge to the left, and then they're the good guys, and people can feel like some sense of sort of moral rectitude for voting for the person with the D in front of the name. And all they have to be always is just like one modicum slightly better than the fascist to their right. And so,
I was at a candidate forum last night, and it was down in Scotland County, which is on the South Carolina border here in North Carolina. And the Democrat who's running for the U.S. House in that area was there, a guy named Ben Clark. And Clark's claim to fame, most recent claim to fame, was he was a Democrat when a few months ago in North Carolina, we had our Don't Say Gay bill here. Right. Ben Clark voted for it, in favor of it. And he's running as a Democratic candidate for U.S. House, someone who, you know, is not an ally of LGBTQIA people, right? You know what I mean? And he was there touting how the Democrats brought you Social Security and, you know, and all this other thing. But yeah, so you have that. I mean, you have that reality that they are just, they're doing just the bare. And what you see, this is where I see with their messaging over and over again, right? It's the Democrats' messaging is basically be happy with the crumbs that you have. And that's what Clark was saying, basically. Be happy with the crumbs you have because the other guys won't give you any. And
why
the Republicans,
are you helping Trump?
I think, and the Republicans kind of say, be happy with your crumbs. Otherwise, the black and brown people will get them. You know, like
and immigrants or whatever.
Whatever. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that they were coming and scrutinizing every signature. And, you know, because there's always the Nader effect and how Nader's always sort of pulled out as the person who ruined everything. And meanwhile, Democrats just fell in line, didn't really work very hard at all to count the ballots and force that recount in Florida. But the other thing that I think a lot of people don't know is that I think Nader got 30,000 votes in Florida.
I think 90,000.
90. Okay. Yeah. 200,000 registered Democrats switched to vote for Bush. But nobody talks about that. That's allowable. It's like that, those, you know, what the Mitt Romney Republicans, right? Like those are the people that Democrats are always trying to fight over, that small smidgen of people, and they leave everybody else behind.
Well, first of all, the idea that the Green Party, people who are voting Green or voting Libertarian or for PSL or whoever are going to vote for the Democrat or Republican is just not correct. I mean, we don't have a lot of great exit polling data on this, but like the CBS News exit polls we have from 2016, among Jill Stein voters, 25% would vote for Hillary Clinton, 14% would vote for Donald Trump, and 61% said they wouldn't have voted for either. I mean, so the math doesn't add up in any of these cases. And then, like you said, with Nader, in Nader's case, there were hundreds of thousands of registered Democrats who voted for Bush. Gore didn't even win his home state of Tennessee. And people, every time they brought it up, it's like the Supreme Court did this. And what, three of the people that worked on that legal team are now on the Supreme Court. I mean, this whole thing is so corrupt and crooked, but people don't want to talk about that.
And they talk about the insurrection now, right? The insurrection now, and they're welcoming Dick and Liz Cheney into the hashtag resistance. That was a successful insurrection. That is something where they actually stopped democracy and put somebody in power who did not win. And he didn't win Florida when they finally did the recount, right? So that was a successful January 6th.
Right. And the idea that, and I have 2 cats on my front porch right now, and when my dogs see them, they're going to go bonkers. So just to give everybody a heads up. I mean, I see the comment there in the chat about how we got cooed successfully, and let alone the whole electoral college thing. The fact that we still got this thing that's related to slavery and making the slave states happy, and the 3/5 compromise, and it's 250 years old, and everyone around the world who looks at it says this is stupid, but we continue to go with it. And in the last 20 years, it's given us both Trump and George W. Bush. But the Democratic Party doesn't seem to want to make
very happy with it. They're completely satisfied with this setup. So I know we only have you for a couple minutes. Why don't you tell us something about your background, what you're like, the policies you are fighting the hardest for, or anything you want to tell us before you have to take off?
Right. So I'm a first-time political candidate. I be time in the Marine Corps and the State Department, a lot of times with activism and advocacy over the last 13 years or so. What I hear as we go around the state and talk to people, and we talk to tens of thousands of people when we were doing our petitioning, and now we're out campaigning, and it's the same issues I hear across the state, no matter where I am. And it's healthcare, it's housing, and it's drugs. And those are our 3 big issues, along with climate, of course. But really, it's about the housing, the people that can't keep up with the rent payments because the rent's going up $150, $200, $300. I mean, people are losing their homes to corporations. I have both the houses across the street from me were purchased by corporations, and those families means I could talk all night about what happened with those families, and have the healthcare. The number of people who have to check their bank accounts before they go to the doctor. Including, and this is why I'm running, because I have people I love who live like that, who are suffering and having to make dangerous decisions, because that's our healthcare system. And then the drugs, and you hear that whether it's the mass incarceration piece or the overdose piece, and of course they overlap. And wherever I am, whether I'm out at the beach, up in the mountains, up in Elizabeth City, or down in Charlotte, or wherever it is, those are the 3 things that keep coming up. And again, like I said earlier, those are not being discussed by Ted Budd or Sherry Beasley. They're just not. I mean, and the media is not bringing it up. And this is what, when we talk about the deadly status quo, this is what we're talking about. And, so that's what we're really pushing. And also too, we try and bring climate into our conversation as often as we can. We find that to be difficult because people just, it's abstract to them. They haven't seen it yet here in North Carolina, although you can meet people in North Carolina because we have plenty of climate refugees. We have a lot of folks from California who are showing up saying, I don't want to deal with the wildfires any longer, or the drought, or whatnot. So, but website's mattforsenate.org. It's the number 4. So matt4senate.org. And if people can support us as we get in these last 7 weeks of the campaign, be very grateful.
Yeah, well, please do. We've been following your race and how you've been treated. And I do feel like third parties, Green Party, it's sort of our only hope, because even though it's, small steps, it holds the people in power accountable just by bringing out the ideas that you're talking about and forcing them to have to, not just look to the right and say we're a little bit better than this. So thank you for doing what you're doing. I know it's not easy.
Yeah. And thank you guys. Thank you for what you're doing. And like I said earlier, this is the stuff that gives me hope. This type of communication, this coordination, this information sharing. This is where I think 10 years from now, we look back and say, wow, the political landscape changed. And I think one of the primary reasons is going to be because of platforms like this that allowed us to do a lot of things that in the past would have been very difficult because of, time, space, and logistics.
Right.
So thanks for what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. Go out there and support Matthew Ho, everybody. And we will keep following along. And after the election, you promise you come back and have some drinks with us.
Absolutely.
You can get a little crazy.
That's right. That's right. Let my hair down, right? Yeah.
That's right. Good luck.
Much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Well, that was great. I mean, that is the only way we're ever going to have any change. You see what happens in parliamentary systems where third, fourth parties, they're alliances that are built because the main parties know that they won't be able to come into power unless they take some of, into consideration what other people want. So
I really feel like we need to create a platform where, like, not platform, but an initiative on the left where we force the Democratic Party and the Republican Party to agree to debate their opponents. Like every election, there should be no election without a debate of
100%.
I don't know what tier you need to get to. There should be something, but like the fact that Nancy Pelosi goes without debates,
that should never be allowed. And then you see these things, these polls like, that we should get rid of people at a certain age. And I feel like that's kind of obfuscating what the real problem is, because I would vote for a dead Bernie Sanders before I'd vote for a Pete Buttigieg, right? But what we need is to force people like Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein and, Joe Biden, who I don't know how miraculously he kept it together for that 1-2-hour debate with Bernie, but to actually have to debate the opposition and there have to be some
and both parties use it like, oh, my opponent's too cowardly to debate, and it's just whoever's ahead in the polls, they just run with it and they accuse the other side of it's just horseshit, and we all know it, but somehow you need to convince the public and the media to get on board with that. The public needs to realize if someone won't debate, there's a problem. And the media never points out that this is a problem or even an issue. They don't say Nancy Pelosi won't debate her opponent.
Right.
So
that fourth estate is not pulling their weight. All right, let's get to the wheel.
Do we need shots?
Been 2 weeks.
I think we do need shots.
I think I need some shots.
All right, let's hash it out. Well, I grab. Let that song play at the very end.
Oh, yeah, you got it. I poured myself my mixer. I'm ready to go. I started with diet tonic. I've moved on to my diet lemonade. Let's get that wheel. Let's spin it.
Where's the wheel? Here we go. What do we got on there?
What do we got? Oh, wait, we're missing a shot. We got Union Joe.
We only have 4 shots. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
No,
Can
it's
you
not
do
all
it?
right. Stall. I'm going to add a shot.
Stall. Okay, I'll just talk about what we've got. Oh, no, you're going to see how the sausage is made back there. Okay.
Copying and pasting.
Over the pandemic, Union Joe, democracy is on the ballot.
I'm just going to leave the shots all wacky like that.
The good billionaires and MAGA communism, folks.
Can't wait to talk about MAGA communism, my favorite new thing.
Sure.
Let's go.
Yeah, baby.
All right. It's all working according to plan. Here we go. Oh my. I've already had 2 drinks. Can you tell? I see how red my face is.
I've had a few. I'm extremely orange, but I think it's my settings because I'm not actually that orange in real life.
Yeah, I think maybe because I'm also so pasty. It's looking like that. Cheers, everybody.
Salud.
Okay.
Yeah, baby.
Let's go.
Oh, that's a dead zone. Look at that, right in the middle too.
Okay, that's how I like to start. You know, we're off to a good start when we get 2 shots right off the bat. Perfect. I will
remove that
sound
boy.
smarter than ever. Ready?
Next to me, you always are. That's my whole role here.
Cheers.
I love it.
Okay. All right. Let's
Topic,
go to topic.
baby.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. That is exactly what he deserves. I mean, talk about manufacturing consent. First, Biden puts together some kind of commission to try to force them to take a bad deal that only addresses salary concerns, but it doesn't even address back pay. That doesn't address scheduling, paid sick leave, time off. Then they reject that, and knowing that they are about to go on strike and they're all fired up, and there's like 11 different unions under this umbrella, right? And they all, if anybody votes against the deal, they go on strike. So then all of a sudden he swoops in, and with a lot of pressure from Steny Hoyer saying that Congress would make a law prohibiting them from striking, we are given this media manufactured narrative that Dark Brandon did it again. He averted the strike, and it's all done, and we're back to business, because otherwise that strike would have shut down the country, instead of anybody saying that the CEOs would have shut down the country, and also that it wasn't a done deal.
Well, the public doesn't even know what they're up against. Like when the media talks about why they're protesting this stuff, they never get into why they want to form a union in the first place. They have no sick days. Railroad workers don't get a sick day, for fuck's sake. I mean,
they don't even get a day off. Like, I think they work 30 days in a row or something. Yeah, like, they don't get weekends off. They're on call.
And they're making record profits as always, while they're laying off record amount of people.
Yep.
So, I mean, Union Joe, he came in, you know, they always used to like to have him, is it the IBEW workers where he's always with, but he's always like in his campaign when he ran for president, he's, you know, he's in the back room with the hard hat on and all that.
Right, right.
But he's really against,
like pushing them in the chest. Yeah. But so like Blue MAGA was in full force. I've been working on the railroad, right? Union. Oh, look at this. POTUS gives art of the deal a whole new meaning. He works for the people, not against them. Meanwhile, 93% of the railroad workers were in favor of rejecting the contract deal proposed by Biden's emergency board. That's Union Joe, right?
Right. And so they're probably going to reject this deal unless there's some backroom stuff that happens before the actual vote. But it's spun to the public as if this is like a done deal and Joe saved the day again, just like the pandemic is over. But that's another segment. But
it's gross. And, you know, he did the same thing. He did. He almost got in the fight with the union guy during the campaign. Totally remember that. It was disgusting. Yeah, he does the same thing where he has Chris Smalls to the White House and says, "Oh, you're going to get me in trouble." Which, by the way, like, why doesn't anybody follow up with that? Why is he allowed to say, "Oh, you're going to get me in trouble"? Is there any reporters or any journalist in trouble with whom? No, right?
There are none.
Nobody. And then they give the $10 billion federal contract. I know you already did that to Amazon. It's sick. Union Joe, Dark Brandon.
Yeah. Well, what he says does not match what he does. We've known that forever. So, I mean, just today, for example, and the point of this is it's not just Joe, it's the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party
of the working class.
They are really not pro-union. So today, kudos to Tom Morello for coming to my city, leader of Rage Against the Machine, to support the United Farm Workers who are fighting just to not get fired if they form a union, basically.
And is our progressive governor fully in support of that?
Yeah. So Newsom is not going to sign the bill if it passes. So there you go.
But
That's
and
the
so
Democratic
then
Party.
that's right. So he says he won't sign the bill. Then Biden says, I think that's wrong. He should sign the bill. So then Biden gets to pretend that he's even more progressive than the progressive governor of the most progressive state in the country. And meanwhile, the poor farmers aren't allowed to try to form a union. I mean, it's like the game they have going. It's a total Globetrotters, clown show.
Yeah. And here's a guy who gets it. I have my beefs occasionally, but still, here's the truth.
One of the most striking features of the last 2 years, which have been strange in many ways, obviously coming out of the worst parts of the COVID pandemic still with us, inflation high, labor markets very tight, has been this raft of union organizing, unlike anything that we've really seen in, I think it's fair to say, decades. The NLRB showing the union elections won by mid-year. You can see that spike there in 2022. It's been about 20 years since we've seen this. What do you think's going on here?
It ain't hard to tell you, to figure out. Workers are working, in many instances, longer hours for lower wages, and with inflation, they're falling further and further behind. You want to know what's going on? In the last 49 years, real wages today are lower than they were 49 years ago, despite an increase in productivity. Almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the people on top. And what working people are saying, excuse me, I can't afford to buy a house, I can't afford to send my kids to college, and yet during the pandemic, the billionaire class saw a $2 trillion increase in their wealth. That's what's going on. People are standing up, fighting back. We've been involved in many of these strikes. We're involved in this railroad situation right now, where you're seeing the most ugly type of corporate greed imaginable. Railroads, 5 major railroads made $20 billion in profits last year. Meanwhile, over the last 6 years, they laid off a third of their workforce. And when workers get sick and they have to stay home, they are in a position to lose their jobs. So what you're seeing right now are workers saying enough is enough. You guys on top, you can't have it all. We need an economy that works for all of us. Unions are one vehicle that help people get decent wages and working conditions.
I have to say, as someone who, covers this kind of stuff, it came as news to me that railroad workers don't get sick days. I think it came as news to the President of the United States. Hopefully that's going to change. We're going to see if they're going to ratify this new contract, but that appears to be one of the changes. Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
God, that's so frustrating. First of all, Chris Hayes should know about what's happening with rail workers. Like, where's his labor reporter? Where's that happening? And then also, how about report on the fact that I think it was like they were going to get maybe either 3 or 5 days in this new proposal, as opposed to the 11 days that they wanted for sick leave or time off for a year. I mean, like, he still is going to make it seem like, oh, if they sign this, then they'll get their sick days. But how about tell us, like, this is what they want, this is what the workers want, and this is what the CEOs are, don't even want to give them, but it's a fraction of what they're asking for.
Yeah, and that's obvious information a journalist would provide. But the thing with Chris Hayes is he always tries to make the argument to the public that he's way left of us. He's super left. It's just that MSNBC ratings wise will only accept certain stories. That's what that's his argument in defense of not covering actual journalism. So here you are having the discussion. So a nuanced discussion where you actually bring up the facts. You're already talking about the topic for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Not bringing up relevant facts is not, it's not hurting your ratings. You're talking about the story.
Right. Yeah.
Like creating drama actually would help your ratings. Like, the workers versus,
Yeah.
That's how you create tension and drama and people tune in.
A show.
So like,
the good guy, the David and Goliath
put some
story.
Trump stakes up there. Let's go.
Well, I hope they strike. They should bring this country to its knees. That's what
they should
happen.
strike. And Home Depot workers are striking now. Did you see the first? Well, not striking. Were they striking, or did they form a union? I don't know. But
I don't know.
Either way, for Home Depot to be involved in any level on this stuff is a big deal, because Home Depot is not like a lefty, Starbucksy kind of organization.
Right.
It's a big. support
I mean,
them.
the CEO is a big like right wing. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but the workers, it's working classes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, they're trying to unionize, I think is right. Yeah. Let's spin the wheel.
Let's do that.
Yeah, baby.
Well, this just bleeds in nicely because, you know, we were told for years that Warren Buffett was one of the good billionaires and he gives away so much of his money and he thinks he should be taxed at a higher rate. But meanwhile, he is one of the owners of the railway and he is, you know, trying to deny them just basic human rights and dignity.
If you actually start affecting their money, you'll realize it's all marketing. Like him being a nice guy is all marketing. He is not a nice guy.
No, of course you do not. Nobody earns $1 billion. You do it by stealing wages and labor and ravaging the planet. But then right away there had to be, because, you know, there is this mythology of, you know, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and meritocracy. And so there is a real vested interest in corporate media pushing the good billionaires. So then they had to come out with the Patagonia guy who was giving away his whole business and he, you know, wasn't passing it down to his children. But it turns out when you do a little digging that what he did through the loopholes that he, you know, took advantage of was going to save him a $700 million tax hit. So,
yeah, I mean, it's like if I'm a millionaire, well, it reminds me of the Clinton Foundation, Clinton Fund was Clinton Global Initiative, where they did like, you know, a couple $1 million worth of good as far as AIDS. But they took in like billions of dollars. So it's like, you can't knock them because, you know, publicly because, oh, they did a couple $1 million worth of good stuff on AIDS research. But if you gave that $1 billion to some other organization, it would accomplish something meaningful versus what you did for that small amount of money.
Fancy parties and reputation laundering, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
and then we had the whole week of the Queen of England, who people, why was anybody in the US feeling like emotional about this? Was insane to see. Like, does everybody understand what the US is, like what we did, that we rebelled against the monarchy? But even she, you know, oh, she was not political, she was just a figurehead. And then it turned out, of course, that she vetted more than 1,000 laws. And, you know, in backroom deals and negotiations, she made sure that, you know, she could hide some of her private wealth, that she could get some exemptions for climate laws, because of course that would, you know, cut into their bottom line. Tried to use state poverty fund to heat Buckingham Palace. So there's another good billionaire right there.
I mean, we have that clip. Should we show the clip? What do you think?
Sure.
All right.
Can you find it? Yeah.
There are no good billionaires. That's the point.
There's a complicated legacy on the African continent. The fairy tale is that Queen Elizabeth went up the treetops here in Kenya, a princess, and came down a queen, because it's when she was here in Kenya that she learned that her dad had died and she was to be the queen. But that also was the start of the 8 years after that the Kenyan colonial government cracked down. The British colonial government cracked down brutally on the Mau Mau rebellion against the colonial administration. They herded more than 1 million people into concentration camps where they were tortured and dehumanized. And so across the African continent, there have been people who are saying, I will not mourn for Queen Elizabeth because my ancestors suffered great atrocities under her people, and that she never fully acknowledged that. And that is why among African Twitter, among Black Twitter and other social media, there's been many people who are ungovernable with takes that maybe don't quite follow the official state religion, which is why you see a statement like this from the South African opposition party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, that said, we do not mourn the death of Elizabeth because to us, her death is a reminder of a very tragic period in this country and Africa's history. During her 70-year reign as queen, she never once acknowledged the atrocities that her family inflicted on native people that Britain invaded across the world. If there is really life and justice after death, may Elizabeth and her ancestors get what they deserve. there are people on social media who are calling out this sort of statements for saying this is not the right time, you should honor the dead. But the critics say, when is really the right time to talk about the legacy of colonialism and the many, many after effects that continue to live with us today? But many African leaders are paying tribute to Queen Elizabeth, including the Kenyan President-elect William Ruto, who's called her 70-year reign and guiding of the Commonwealth as admirable. You saw, for instance, the statement from President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria that said, "My family and the more than 200 million Nigerians have learned with immense sadness of the passing of Queen Elizabeth and the end of her unique and wonderful 70-year reign. She was the only British sovereign known to 90% of our population." And while there are people who supported President Buhari for that, he has gotten a lot of criticism for that sort of sentiment. To use the slang of the times, he's gotten ratioed for many people seeing him ignoring the impact of British colonialism in Nigeria. Michael.
Yeah, honoring the woman, but acknowledging the stain of colonialism.
Yeah, I'm surprised they showed that on CNN also, but I that might have been yeah.
Oops. I think we were both pushing the same buttons.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reason is that was CNN International. That wasn't US CNN.
Yeah.
They're not going to show that here.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, and for a very long time, people didn't know about Jeff Bezos's horrific practices at Amazon. Started to add a bit of critical reporting, which I was really grateful for. But then we saw the way he treats his workers. But for a while, I remember people trotting him out as a possible Democratic nominee for president. Howard Schultz was another one. Bill Gates was another one that people insisted was a good billionaire.
Oprah,
and then
anyone with a shit ton of money is like seen as a hero to the public.
Who supports gay rights. That's all you have to do is say, I support gay rights and, not overturning Roe. And that's like enough. But meanwhile, Gates, who I don't know if he's the richest man anymore. I think it might be Elon Musk, but became the biggest donor to the World Health Organization, second only to the United States. He fought against that's a different one. Sorry. Against vaccinating, to release the patent to vaccinate the rest of the world, the global South, right? So he is responsible for millions of avoidable deaths that could have been prevented by releasing the patents, letting those generic versions of the mRNA vaccines be duplicated and replicated. That would have, really, I don't know if it would have shut down the pandemic, but it would have done a lot to stop the spread.
When you're in a pandemic, everything you can do matters. To be Bill Gates, who claims to be this science guy who's out to save the world through philanthropy, and not spread the goddamn vaccine to countries that can't afford it. Yeah, it's gross. Even that he has that ability to affect the World Health Organization. He's not a doctor. He's not a medical person. He's not a science person. He's just rich. It's really sick. Anyway, they're no good billionaires. I know you all know it, but it's always good to see another one taken down. Even the Patagonia guy, not a good billionaire. There.
Yeah.
Although I lived in Tahoe, so I had a lot of Patagonia clothing. But now that I know better,
you can't avoid it. Well, listen, how can you avoid it? It's all,
Now I can. Now I can't afford it now. That's how. All right.
Yeah, baby.
Okay.
Boom.
Here we go. Yeah, is there a non-asshole philanthropist? I don't think so. All right, Pat, you take point on this one. The MAGA-communism. Should we at least just see their
first
trending
off,
communism?
Yeah, communism is trending. Okay, so this idea of MAGA communism. I don't know if you want to see this list, but
my God,
we'll get more into this, but it's a lot of shit that's not anywhere related to communism. It's a lot of MAGA and it's a lot of libertarian shit. But the idea that MAGA folks and communists are going to unite, I fully support talking to MAGA people. Always, have the discussion, try to win them over. Where we unite on issues, believe it or not, is a lot of the popular things that Bernie's campaign ran on. And if you notice that list, and I encourage you to look at this list, it's Jackson Hinkle's bullshit. But go look at the list, and that healthcare is not on his list.
It's
healthcare.
insane. Yeah.
Healthcare is literally not on his list of MAGA communism. All the things that unite populism, a lot of them are not on that list.
Yeah. I mean, let's just remember, and this is like a little bit of a busy graphic, but this was the exit poll, an analysis, a voter analysis on election night of Fox viewers, so Republicans. And one policy idea after another, whether it's nationalizing or healthcare, the role of government, they should do more, climate, gun laws, Roe, not overturning Roe. I mean, one policy position after another was majority popular with a Republican audience. Bernie went on a town hall on Fox News that Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg were too scared to do. And as our friend holding Biden accountable said, Elizabeth Warren was a Republican longer than Trump was, and was scared to go on Fox News. Bernie goes on, talks about the ideas, and gets a whole town hall of people giving him a standing ovation. That's what you do. You don't change your policy and your ideology to appeal to fascists. You show them that there is a better way.
And there's no world where these two ideologies unite. Okay. You change people's views to somewhere in the middle, maybe, but you don't unite over MAGA and communism. Those two are antithetical ideas.
It's so ridiculous. Well, yeah. Okay. And then I just want to say one other thing, because here's where I also think it gets really dangerous. So first of all, it's the same tactic that Chuck Schumer said, was it Chuck Schumer, I think, who said, for every, working class Democrat we lose, we're going to get 2 Mitt Romney Republicans, right? So it's that same method or approach that the mainstream Democrats have taken for decades now, of always just going after a sliver of people who sometimes vote one way and sometimes vote another way, as opposed to the 48% of our country that feels disenfranchised and is just given up, or the base of the Democratic Party, right? So that's one thing where it's like, why are you choosing to unite in this way with MAGA? But the other thing that makes it really dangerous is he is helping fuel this idea that there is the fringe left and fringe right, and there's really not a lot of difference. It's that whole thing of equating Bernie and Trump, and that horseshoe theory that corporate Democrats love to talk about, that is inaccurate, but except for this guy.
Okay. Let's all just take a step back and look at, I hate to put something on a person, but let's just look at the person who's promoting this theory. Here he is on Tucker Carlson, which is not an error on your own, on its own, taken out in a vacuum. Going on Tucker Carlson is not a bad thing. If you push back, if you advance leftist theory, but let's watch a minute of him on Tucker.
Biden is plunging us into a fascist state, and he is taking cues from what Zelensky is doing in Ukraine to manufacture this dystopian state and this dystopian reality in America. And there's no real surprise for me there, because at the end of the day, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and Joe Biden are controlled by the same exact people. They're controlled by individuals like George Soros and controlled by people like Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, and they're going to do whatever they want. To put it quite simply, Zelensky is using the intelligence community in Ukraine and the Nazi Azov thugs in Ukraine to silence freedom-loving Ukrainians. Joe Biden in the United States, though he can't remember what he had for breakfast this morning or who his wife is, his handlers and his cronies are prepping the CIA, the FBI, Antifa, the IRS, and now Ministry of Truth to attack freedom-loving Americans.
That was a whole word salad, by the way. Yeah.
I mean, if you just slow it down a little bit, he's going after Antifa, which is also in his other, the tenets of
Yeah.
MAGA communism are, one of them is that Antifa is bad. And
Right.
I don't know if you know what Antifa means, but it's anti-fascist. It's right in the fucking name. But anti-fascism is bad. And freedom-loving Americans, when you say that on Tucker, so what is it? What is the end result of this douchebag being on fucking Tucker Carlson? The end result of this douchebag being on Tucker Carlson is that Democrats agree with Tucker Carlson. Communists, leftists agree with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is the place to go for the real truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a real
obviously
slap in the face to the group of people on the left who he once pretended to be part of. I mean, he still calls himself, he calls himself a communist. I don't know how he can say those things.
Look, this list is not communist. I mean, this guy has free gym memberships up here and not healthcare.
Patriotic education and woke academia. I mean, it's all these dog whistles, right?
It's everything that Tucker Carlson wants to talk about. Because they want to encourage these dog whistles. They love this George Soros shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
All right. But I just want to show, I mean, this is, look, there's a ton of stuff on who this douchebag is, right? You want to go look it up. You can see what a fucking awful misogynist he is. He's a kid. So maybe it's just dumb shit, but really he's looking for clout, which is what it's all about. And in his own words,
I did it for the clout. I do everything for the clout. You will never see me do something not for the clout. That's the only way I operate. That is the only way I operate. That is the only way I operate.
There is a great flip though. Like,
you don't have any character.
I don't even know what that was. Is that like a Twitch stream or something? I don't even know. I'm too old. Anyway, it's really lame. And you know, the thing is that there is such a push by like, you know, the Bill Maher's and the corporate Democrats and the center, who I don't think they're even the center, but to push this idea of the fringe left being the same as the fringe right, that it is such a betrayal, and it's dangerous. I actually think it's dangerous. Like, I think it's worse than just moronic. I think to try to pretend that the far left and the far right are the same, and for him to act as if he's a spokesperson for the far left or the left, is just completely dishonest and dangerous.
Yeah, well, if you watch more of the other clips from him, he's trying to come across as a communist. He does nothing to espouse communist theory. He says that Americans don't like communism because of George Soros and his propaganda campaign against communism.
Jews.
Yeah. So this is who he is.
So many dog whistles. It's so gross.
He's made 1 million dog whistles against trans rights. So his idea is you throw this all out and we just unite with MAGA. And he's if you watch some of the stuff he's put out recently, he's saying, there's a clip like saying, we'll finish the job of MAGA. MAGA almost got it done. You know, like this is not leftist stuff. I mean, people who have been around this stuff for a while, we recognize like the influence of Koch money, the Koch brothers, you know, trying to be anti-climate change. So I don't know. I'm not saying this guy's taking money from them, but he's grifting for his own influence. This guy was a hardcore Democrat going after all the left a while ago. And then he pivoted to being a Bernie guy. And now he's doing this. And he's 23 or 4 or something. Yeah. You know, and he's not focused on politics. He challenged these guys to a debate. He challenged Ben Sturgis, or I don't know, somebody. He's Ben Norton. He challenged Ben Norton to do a debate with his shirt off in a video. Like, like this is the guy that anyone is supposed to take seriously. Yeah. Nobody take this guy seriously. Shut down this MAGA communism crap. It's total nonsense. Fuck out.
Yeah, I feel like we've already given it more air than it deserves, but I know everybody here is on the same page, but it was trending. I mean, it was trending like several days in a row. And to go from communism trending when Queen Elizabeth dies a week ago, and then for it to parlay into MAGA communism was just a real disappointment.
Just ouch. Like, fuck off. Like, no.
Yeah. That's all right there. All right. Let's spin the wheel.
We might have a shot coming.
Yeah, baby.
Okay. One more shot before we get to the wheel. My face is so red. I keep putting ice on it when we're showing clips. I've got like 6 lights on myself and lots of alcohol. All right, everybody. Ready?
To alcohol. Which one of these do you want? I think I want over the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think we kind of talked about everything else, but let's just.
I know. Let's see.
Yeah, baby.
That you manifested it. Look at you. Well, good news, everybody. Good news. Let's hear it from Dark Brandon himself.
The pandemic is over. We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over. If you notice, no one's wearing masks. Everybody seems to be in pretty good shape. And so I think it's changing, and I think this is a perfect example of it.
Gross, 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 gross. Liar.
If you notice, nobody is wearing masks because they listen to me, and I'm the fucking leader who's supposed to show by example, and I'm telling people the pandemic is over, so they're not wearing masks. So that somehow means we're safe.
By the way, everybody had to test that day, a PCR test. So he knew, every time they talk about the tools, they get to use all of the tools. They are testing. They get sick days. They have doctors. They have Paxlovid, whatever. They, they have all the, I bet that the air in that place was filtered and cleaned, right? So yeah, there's in my house, there's no pandemic. We never go anywhere. We mask everywhere. So it's totally safe in my house. And if you have the power to make every space you enter like that, sure, the pandemic's over for him. Meanwhile, he's tested positive 3 different times for COVID. But
3 times. He probably has long COVID, but that part's irrelevant because he's, probably 5 years max. There's no way he's makes 5 more years, but
yeah, but that's another thing, right, Viola? It's what are the parameters? They've never defined. I mean, they keep shifting what the definition of this being over is. How many cases per 100,000? How many hospitalizations? 500 deaths yesterday, or 426. Somebody said 426. I mean, I think 7,500 people have died this month alone.
So the death toll itself makes it immoral to say the pandemic is over. But if you bring in long COVID, it makes all arguments about the pandemic being over completely immoral because you're arguing for less protections in schools. Schools don't have adequate ventilation when they've shown $100 a classroom can provide adequate ventilation. That's not a priority. Just masks. I mean, wearing masks, obviously. Yep. So masks and $100 per classroom is not undoable for the fucking richest country on earth. I mean, PTA moms would donate $100 if you told them it was risky to build the damn thing. There's a rich kid in every class. The rich kid's parents could pay for the fucking thing if they believed that the pandemic was real.
Yeah, I know. It's so sinister and cynical because by declaring it over and not an emergency anymore, money dries up. There's no push for it from the outside. People think it's over. They change the color coding of the map. Nobody's wearing a mask anymore. Nobody wants to test. Whenever I insist on those things, I'm ridiculed. I mean, I don't care, but I'm one person with a lot of privilege. I don't have to go into a place to work. My kid goes to school where nobody wears a mask. I insist he does, but that it's just, it snowballs. And what it really does, 93% of the nation is currently experiencing high or substantial community transmission.
And I mean, that level, just so you know, is when the CDC recommends mask mandates. but they don't have the power to say mask mandates, but they recommend mask mandates when when counties are at this level.
Yeah.
So our president is literally saying the pandemic is over while the CDC, without telling you, because they've reorganized the way the CDC presents its information to the public, but the CDC's own data, which is politicized, is still telling you that everyone should be mandating masks right now.
Yep. And it is not just the flu. I know they love to say that. New Yorkers encourage New Yorkers to move beyond the pandemic. They say it's just like the flu, but you have a 6 to 9 times higher risk of death with COVID for children than when they get the flu.
And the COVID is way more prevalent than influenza, because COVID in schools, every kid has gotten COVID. Like just about,
and the
like,
more
it's something like
it affects
80%.
your immune system, which is why we're going to see more pandemics, more variants, more disease, more long COVID. I mean, it is just, it's a mass disabling event, and everybody who has had COVID is now somebody with a pre-existing condition.
And that's why you're seeing all this propaganda against it. Like NPR, like when people say NPR is leftist progressive, holy shit, they're not. Oh, I gotta go this way. So here it is. This is the classic move of propaganda. Scientists debate how lethal COVID is. Some say it's now less risky than the flu. That's the caption. When you get into the story,
NPR.
They admit that it's not, but people don't look past the caption. That's the whole thing.
I mean, we did that for 30 years with climate change, right? With global warming, it was like, well, some scientists agree, some scientists don't.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it was 98% of scientists, and all of big oil knew, because they had commissioned the science and they absolutely knew that climate change was real. Yeah, it's really disgusting. Yeah. And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I wanted to show, we don't have it. Well, we pulled it, but it's too long. But Mehdi Hassan did a good takedown of this. Kudos to him. He's kind of a shitty guy once in a while, but he means well. So kudos to him for actually covering it. But here's one takedown of Biden's, one response to Biden's, the pandemic is over.
Eric, let me start with you. You also had some harsh words for President Biden on Twitter. What was your immediate response to his comments when you heard them on Sunday night?
I was just blindsided and my jaw just dropped, because to recognize, that 40,000 people had died in the last 100 days, and again, 400 to 500 a day, is just absolutely abysmal. This is something I would expect from the last president to have said something that the COVID is over, but not our current president. And that's why, just like me and just like many of his advisors, we're very frustrated by this. And we're almost turning like a blind eye to all the deaths and to all the long COVID out there, and to all those who are immunocompromised. If you think about it, this is absolute ableism and ignoring the suffering of those who have immunocompromised and disabilities, in which, if you think about all the risk factors, it's like 2/3 to 3/4 of all Americans.
Yeah. PBS and NPR, Koch Foundation is part of their sponsorship. Yeah, it's all just about getting people back to work. It's really gross. But Mehdi Hassan has done a really good job of bringing focus to COVID. Yeah.
But unfortunately, the problem is that's not happening actually on MSNBC, even though you see the MSNBC logo, because it's Peacock streaming, so nobody sees it relative to actual.
They're normal.
So why
audience.
Why would? All right, so let's just hit a few of the points about COVID. Mask work, we know this. This is not some rocket science. Scientists don't disagree. Mask work. Tests show that over and over. U.S. life expectancy is in the shitter. It's because of COVID. We're one of the worst countries on COVID. Medicare for all would have fucking saved the day. We're not getting that in our next year or two, so that's not going to happen, but clearly it would have mattered. Long COVID, which is the thing they cannot talk about on the mainstream media. They cannot ever talk about long COVID because it debunks everything about deaths. Like they want it all framed about deaths because you've managed to lower the
and
deaths.
Hospitalizations, right?
But you've got all these kids in school, and they're going to get exposed repeatedly. And And all the science shows that the more you're exposed to this, even if you have an asymptomatic response, it's doing collective damage to you. 2 to 4 million people right now are not working. That's just how many people are not working because of long COVID.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's disgusting. There's no sanctity of life. It's all about getting people back to work. And, the fact that Biden stopped OSHA protections, no paid sick leave, isn't that if you aren't insured, your COVID testing and treatment is no longer free. I mean, those are all things we got under Trump. And more people have died under Biden in the same, at the same rate or over the same number of days than under Trump. So this is a crime against humanity. I mean, it is really appalling, and so few people are speaking up. And even, I have to Bernie just recently started talking about Medicare for all again, but it's been a year and a half now. Yeah.
But talking about Medicare for all is talking about changing the whole system. It's a grandiose thing. It's not what's facing us this moment, because you're not going to, even if you get Medicare for all. I mean, you saw the drug increase that Biden got was 10 drugs increased over 60 years to save, $10 or something.
Yeah.
It's garbage. So,
yeah.
But right now they could be speaking up about ventilation in schools, make your
masking.
whole thing. If all the progressives got together and said, you know what, it's all about the kids. We need to make sure schools are safe. We're going to get ventilation and in-suit masking. They
and
can
testing.
Make a
Nobody tests anymore. There's no testing. Yeah. So, it's like if a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it. Yeah, that's crazy. That's when right? I can't get a life insurance policy until 60 days after my positive COVID test. In case you thought COVID was no big deal, apparently life insurance companies do think it's a big deal. Whenever it affects bottom line, those people take it very seriously.
Yeah, we're fucked.
We're fucked.
But
yeah,
we need to push progressives to actually speak up on this. That's my big beef right now.
I agree.
If you want us to follow you in the future, maybe help out with COVID a little bit, for me to trust who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really depressing to see how they've just all fallen in line. But yeah, we have to speak out, because right now we're looked at, anybody who takes it seriously is looked at as some sort of Chicken Little, the sky is falling, oh, it's just the flu. It's no big deal. I had it. And it is really going to change the trajectory of this country and the next generation. They don't even know what's coming for them with all this mass infection.
Yeah. So this is the problem. So this was 2020. In 2020, the New York Times ran an ad, U.S. deaths near 100,000, an incalculable loss. Meanwhile, 2 years after the pandemic, we have a $400,000 people die a year from COVID. And the pandemic is over.
Yeah. That's harm reduction right there. Vote blue, fellas. Vote blue. Well, I don't want to end on a depressing note, even though that is incredibly depressing.
Sorry.
Everyone should wear a mask. Please get your boosters. I'm actually I don't know. I'm curious to see what everybody's doing. I don't know how long this newest booster is supposed to last, but because I think I have family coming over Christmas, and because I luckily can work from home, I'm going to wait a little bit before I get my 5th shot. I mean, how many, if people just wore masks and, had a little bit of concern for other people, that would actually be that would go a long way towards squashing this. But anyway, I will be getting my 3rd booster sometime soon. I know, Pat, you just got yours. But stay healthy out there, everybody, because these weekly sessions give me so much joy hanging out with everybody and talking about all the devastation around us. I want to make sure everybody's still around.
I want to cry.
I want to cry.
I appreciate
everyone.
you and everyone for watching.
Thank you so much. Love hanging out with all of you. Keep punching up, and we'll see you next week. And thank you to Matthew Ho. for being a guest tonight.
Amen.
Cheers.